My girlfriend laughed when I lost my job and said, "Now you can't afford to marry me." She had no idea I was starting my own company the next morning. The day I lost my job, I thought the worst part would be telling my girlfriend. I was wrong. The worst part was hearing her laugh. Not an awkward laugh. Not a nervous laugh. The kind of laugh someone lets out when they think they've just heard the funniest joke of their life. My name is Noah Bennett. I'm 30 years old, and until last year, I worked as a senior software engineer for a cybersecurity company in Austin, Texas. I'd been there for almost 6 years. The company wasn't failing. I wasn't fired for poor performance. Our largest investor pulled out after a market downturn. The company announced a massive restructuring, and nearly 200 employees, including me, were laid off in a single afternoon. Everyone received the same speech. "This decision isn't a reflection of your work." I've always hated that sentence. If my work wasn't the problem, why was I packing my desk into a cardboard box? Still, I wasn't panicking. I had savings, no debt, a strong resume. I'd probably find another job within a month or two, or at least, that's what I believed while driving home. On the way, I stopped at my favorite bakery and bought Emma's favorite strawberry cheesecake. She loved cheesecake almost as much as she loved celebrating every tiny milestone. I figured we'd eat dessert, talk through everything, and start planning my next move together. That's what partners do. Or at least, that's what I thought partners did. Emma and I had been together for 4 years. We'd already looked at engagement rings, talked about wedding venues, even joked about baby names. She always said she didn't care if I became a millionaire. "As long as we're together," she'd tell me, "we'll figure everything out." Funny how quickly forever changes when money disappears. I walked into our apartment around 6 that evening. She was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone. She looked up. "You're home early." I forced a smile. "Yeah." She immediately noticed the cardboard box in my hands. "What happened?" "I got laid off." She stared at me for about 3 seconds. Then, she laughed. Actually laughed. I remember blinking because I genuinely thought I'd misheard her. "Wait." She covered her mouth while trying not to laugh again. "You're serious?" "Yeah." Another laugh escaped. "Oh my God." I stood there holding the cheesecake like an idiot. "I don't understand what's funny." She finally stopped laughing. Then she looked me straight in the eyes and said something I'll never forget. "Well, I guess now you can't afford to marry me." Silence. That's all there was. Silence. For 4 years I'd imagined proposing to this woman. For 4 years I'd believed she loved me. In one sentence, she made me realize she'd been calculating my value all along. I set the cheesecake on the kitchen counter. "So, that's your first thought?" She shrugged. "I'm just being realistic. I lost my job 6 hours ago." "I know. You couldn't even pretend to care?" She crossed her arms. "I'm thinking about our future." "So am I." "No, Noah." She shook her head. "You were." That hurt more than the layoff. Then she said something that made everything click. "My parents warned me this could happen." "What?" "They said tech isn't stable. They've never liked me." "They were right." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable. "So that's it." She sighed dramatically. "I've worked too hard to build the life I want. And I'm not starting over with someone who's unemployed." I stared at the woman I'd planned to spend the rest of my life with. It was like talking to a complete stranger. "You know I have savings." "For how long?" "I'll get another job. Maybe." "Emma." She interrupted me. "I've always wanted a husband who could provide." "I have been." "You were." Again, past tense. I nodded slowly. Then I walked into the bedroom, packed a duffel bag with enough clothes for a week, grabbed my laptop, and headed for the door. She didn't try to stop me. She didn't apologize. She simply asked one question. "So, where are you going?" I looked back. "A place where losing my job doesn't change my worth." Then I left. I spent that night at my best friend Jake's house. He listened to everything without interrupting. When I finished, he shook his head. "I've never liked her." "You could have mentioned that." "You looked happy." "I thought I was." He handed me another cup of coffee. So what? What now? I stared out the window for a long time. Then I smiled. I stopped waiting. Jake frowned. For what? For the perfect time. You see, for almost 3 years, I'd been working on something after hours. Not because I hated my job, because I loved solving problems. While working in cybersecurity, I developed a cloud-based threat detection platform that could identify ransomware attacks almost instantly using behavioral AI instead of traditional signature databases. I'd shown the concept to my employer more than once. Every time management said the same thing. Too risky. Maybe next year. Not enough market demand. So I kept improving it on nights and weekends. The code belonged to me. I built every line on my own equipment on my own time. I'd even registered the patents months earlier after speaking with an intellectual property attorney. I wasn't planning to quit my job anytime soon. The software was just a passion project. Until that afternoon. Losing my job didn't destroy my future. It removed the only excuse I had left. The next morning, I woke up at 6, drove to the Secretary of State's office, and officially registered my company, Sentinel Forge Technologies. The filing fee was less than $300. That single payment turned the worst day of my career into the first day of something much bigger. For the next 4 months, I worked harder than I ever had in my life. 18-hour days became normal. I lived in Jake's guest room. We survived on frozen pizzas, cheap coffee, and whatever was on sale at the grocery store. Some weeks I didn't leave the house except to buy groceries. There were moments I questioned everything. But every time I thought about giving up, I remembered Emma laughing. Not because I wanted revenge, because I refused to let that be the moment that defined me. 5 months later, Sentinel Forge launched its first enterprise pilot with a regional healthcare network. Within 3 weeks, our software detected 2 ransomware attempts that every other security product on their network had missed. The hospital renewed immediately. Then they recommended us to another healthcare group. Then another. Word spread faster than I ever imagined. 8 months after starting the company, we closed our first major funding round. $12 million. Jake, who'd become my operations director, walked into my office holding the signed paperwork. We actually did it. I leaned back in my chair. No. What? We're just getting started. A year after I lost my job, Sentinel Forge had grown from 2 people working in a spare bedroom to more than 60 employees across 3 states. Then something happened I never saw coming. One afternoon, our HR director walked into my office. We've got an interesting resume. She handed it to me. I looked down. Emma Collins. I blinked. Apparently, the luxury real estate company she joined after leaving me had gone through its own layoffs. She'd been unemployed for nearly 3 months. She hadn't applied for a job as an executive. She'd applied for an account coordinator position. She had no idea the company was mine. Our HR director asked, "Want me to reject it?" I thought about it for a second, then smiled. No. Interview. Schedule it. A week later, she walked into our headquarters wearing a navy blazer and carrying a leather portfolio. She looked confident, until she entered the conference room. The moment she saw me sitting at the head of the table, every bit of color disappeared from her face. Noah. Hi, Emma. She looked completely frozen. I didn't know. I know. She slowly sat down. I had no idea this was your company. I figured. For almost 30 seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, she smiled awkwardly. I'm really happy for you. Thank you. I always knew you'd do something great. I couldn't help but laugh. No. Her smile faded. You didn't. She looked down. I made a mistake. You did. I'm sorry. I believe you. Hope appeared on her face. Then I continued. But you're apologizing because you need something. She didn't answer. You laughed when I lost everything. I was scared. No. I shook my head. You were disappointed. Tears filled her eyes. I was stupid. Probably. I wish I could take it back. So do I. She reached across the table. I still love you. I leaned back in my chair. No. She stared at me. You love the version of me you think I became. Silence. I was the same man when I walked into our apartment carrying that cardboard box. She started crying. The only thing that changed, I looked around the office we'd built from scratch, was my bank account. I stood up. The interview is over. She quietly asked. So, I didn't get the job. I smiled politely. No. She lowered her head. I understand. As she reached the door, I stopped her. She turned around. I really hope you find another job. She looked surprised. I mean that. Thank you. But this company, I smiled one last time, only hires people who believe in someone before they're successful. She nodded once, then walked away without saying another word. I never saw her again. People often assume the best revenge is making someone jealous. They're wrong. The best revenge is becoming so successful that you no longer need revenge at all. Emma thought unemployment revealed my value. In reality, it revealed hers. She saw a man without a paycheck. I saw the opportunity I'd been waiting years to take. She laughed because she believed my story was ending. The truth was, it had finally begun.